Hey, what's up, everybody? This is an open discussion with C3 Films. My name is Chris, and this is.
Cheryl.
And today we are talking about the show Pennyworth. It's on HBO Max. It's from DC. It's like the story before Batman about his butler, Alfred Pennyworth. So we are going to go into spoiler territory here. So if you haven't seen the show, you can go check it out on HBO Max and then come back and watch our show and us talking about it. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So the thing about Pennyworth that surprised me, I realized I didn't know much about the production of the show because you said it was on HBO Max, right? And so what I thought that meant was, oh, it was a show that was made on some other network that Warner Brothers is affiliated with or owns or whatever, and then put onto HBO Max. But after watching the first episode, which by the way is like there's f bombs, there's nudity, and there's actual it's not gory death, but there's death, and and then I realized I was like, oh, wait a second. I think this is an HBO Max exclusive show. Is that actually the case, or do you know?
I'm not really sure. I just kind of saw it there, so I was like, okay.
Okay, because that caught me off guard because it's not like watching Gotham on Netflix, right? Like Gotham was on Fox and then put onto Netflix, but Pennyworth feels like it's basically it's an R-rated show for
Yeah.
sure.
And by the
Um,
way, the title itself, Pennyworth, is like it doesn't sound like an uncommon last name. It sounds like a real last name that like
yeah,
exists in real life, but it's like you automatically think of Alfred.
right. Yeah,
So that's
that
such a
character is kind of
cool.
taking it.
Yeah, and it's just intriguing. I think that's why it attracted me because I just saw like I mean you don't really know what it's about, but you see Pennyworth, you know exactly what it's gonna be about. Especially
Mm,
since there's like in the image it's a young guy, so it's like oh this is gonna be about Alfred before he becomes Alfred.
right. Before he becomes a butler to the Caped Crusader. Yeah. So going into it, I'm starting to realize something. If there's one thing that Gotham and Pennyworth have shown me, it has been how much I love the character of Alfred and what they've been doing with him recently. Because quite literally, Alfred is just he's just very awesome. Even with what they imply, how they imply Alfred, or who they imply Alfred to be in the Robert Pattinson Batman movie. Alfred is this guy that basically trained Batman, and these shows like give you that image of how he was able to do that. And we'll talk about Gotham later in another episode, but in the context of this, you see him. He's framed as a war veteran. He's been in the army for 10 years, and now he's gotten out. He has his own group of soldiers that he's like cool with, and he's trying to start up a new company. He wants to have his own business. His father seems to be somebody that is like I think his father's a butler, and it seems like they come from a line of butlers as a part of a family occupation, and so his father wants him to take up the family occupation, but Alfred wants something new. So it's very like standard as far as kind of like the whole thing of, oh, I'm going to be different than my father and I'm going to find my own way and blah blah blah, I'm building something. Like we've seen that kind of story before, but I think the thing that makes it more interesting is the fact that one, we know that Alfred eventually does become a butler, but also because it's very cool to see Alfred showcasing skills that we don't get to see him showcase as Batman's butler, but we know that he has.
Yeah, it's kind of like a. I mean, he's just a regular guy, right? He's a vet. He's just come home from the war, and he. I mean, you would think like this show could be anything, about anything, and what they decide to make it is this whole crazy, internal. Not it's not just regular people. It's the British government from the
Yep.
inside that he now has to like shut down. And then even at the end, he gets like a medal and he's like acknowledged by the queen and everything for doing a service and everything in the first episode. But then she's
Right?
like, "Don't tell anyone." So it means nothing because he's still considered a nobody because he's asked to keep it a secret by the queen.
By
So
the queen.
it's kind of like that carried over into Batman because when he is, Bruce Wayne's butler, he's playing the role of Bruce Wayne's butler, but then he's also like CIA agent, kind of, someone who's meant to look like no one, but is actually this incredible person that can do like amazing things.
Yeah, and it almost feels like because in the show he's trying to do security, he's trying to start up a security firm, but it almost feels like he's what he becomes to the Waynes is less of a butler and more like a bodyguard, knowing what he's capable of, right? And I really enjoyed seeing in this first episode him doing his thing because he is surgical. They make sure that he and his crew are good at what they do, and he doesn't like killing. That's like kind of his thing. So they're kind of creating that parallel between him and Batman, how he doesn't like to kill, but he has, and he knows how to, but he's trying to move away from that. But when you see him doing certain things, at times I thought I was watching like a James Bond movie. They're like there's like less tech and stuff, but we're in the UK and there's this really suave debonair actor playing this guy that's walking around in a suit and just taking people out with a gun or like with hand-to-hand combat. There were times I was like, this feels like the James Bond or the Alfred Pennyworth version of James Bond, and I was loving every minute of it.
And he gets captured too, so it's not like he's invulnerable. And I think
Right?
that's what kind of raises the stakes a little bit is because you never really feel like he's invincible, um, because of the way they play it. Like he's just a regular guy who just happens to be able to have some skills, but even those skills don't protect him from everything. So I would even say I mean, that he's gonna live on because you know what his future is. You know that he's gonna become a butler and everything, but then you still always feel like something's gonna happen to him, and something's gonna happen because of what his future is gonna be. You know that he doesn't end up with Esme.
Yeah.
Like we don't know what's gonna happen with his parents. All we know is that he meets Thomas Wayne and kind of becomes friends with Thomas Wayne and has some kind of alliance with him. But other than that, it seems like everyone else in his life,
Up for grabs.
yeah, like I have a feeling all of them are gonna die by the end
Yeah.
because none of them are in the acknowledged in the universe in the future.
Right. It's not like they were popping by for a spot of tea to visit him in freaking Gotham. So yeah, like I'm with you, and I think that that's a good way of doing shows like this. That's one of the things that the Clone Wars did very well is that if you're gonna write a prequel show, and like we'll see how this show develops as far as these characters, but if you're gonna do a prequel show that takes place in a universe where we know the ending, then we know that there's certain characters we don't have to be afraid for. But if you make us like characters that we haven't seen in the future, it makes every single moment where they are in trouble scary because
Yes.
even though if you're expecting it to come, you never know when. So like in this situation, they might get out of it, but at the same time, they might not. You don't know because they're not around. So, and I think that that's an effective thing that this show can do. I feel like they created likable characters in Esme and his parents. I really enjoyed the last scene where their parents are just like kicking the
Kicking.
dude as he's down. I was like, okay, this is something they didn't have to do, but it gave personality to his parents and made them feel more than just like caricatures or just stand-ins to just be Alfred Pennyworth's parents. So I like that a little bit.
And I like how, yeah, I agree. It kind of gave them more dimension. It made them more likable because before that, like, the mom was, just kind of a nosy, like, oh, you don't always have to listen to your father kind of thing. And, like, the father was very like, just a antagonist almost, just always going against whatever Alfred is doing at the moment. And then that scene kind of brought them all together as a family, even with Esme, because there was conflict with Esme as well, where, the father was being kind of aggressive and not making her feel welcome when they were first
Right.
meeting. And then on top of all of that, all of them are in danger. And like that just goes to say, like you mentioned, we like those characters and we're scared for them because they're not in the future. And right off the bat in episode 1, they're all in danger. Esme gets kidnapped, and she gets
Right.
rescued, but then all three of them again are in a hostage situation, and it's just them versus Pennyworth versus the bad guys, and you're never led to believe that the parents and Esme can help. So it just
No,
feels like it's Pennyworth versus 2-on-1.
exactly. So yeah, so that's why it comes as a pleasant surprise when everybody gets a lick in.
Yeah,
They all fight for survival in that scene, and that's great.
and
Another thing that really
realistic.
surprised me was the way in which things developed, because obviously we know that Alfred has to meet Thomas Wayne at some point, and we assume it's going to happen in the first episode because we believe that the series is mainly going to be about the two of them getting to know each other and their hijinks. I actually thought it was going to be Thomas, Alfred, and Martha, but it makes sense that Thomas doesn't necessarily know Martha yet, or maybe she's not in the picture. So I kind of like that, kind of surprised me, and I like that element. But the other thing that I liked was how it came together for them to actually be involved in each other's lives, where it was a very innocuous meeting of this guy trying to help Thomas's sister, I think it was, or his cousin. I can't remember. I think it was his
Sister,
sister.
yeah.
And then they exchange business cards because Alfred's trying to make a business and Thomas is just trying to be polite. And then weeks later, when the person asks, "Find me Thomas Wayne," I love that Alfred's like, "Who's Thomas Wayne?" Because that's real. Like if I met some random person 3 weeks ago, I'm not gonna remember that person's name verbatim in like a 5-minute interaction. So I love the fact that he didn't know who they were talking about. So yeah, and that was great. I also like that Thomas kept getting Alfred's name wrong when they first met, calling him Albert over and over again because he wasn't really paying attention to the interaction either. He was just trying to get his sister home, which makes sense. He was just trying to get out of there. So, I like the fact that Thomas Wayne was doing something that put him on the radar of these other people. And then when they weren't able to kill Thomas, when they were just going through his stuff, they find Alfred's business card and they think that Alfred has an association. And now all of a sudden, we've connected our two main characters. So I like that. I liked how that was interwoven.
Yeah, I really like how they didn't just meet at like the bar and then Alfred gives him the business card, like if you ever need security, and then one day Thomas Wayne is like, I need security. I'm gonna call.
Right.
That would have been like so like that's what I thought was gonna happen, and I'm glad it didn't happen that way. I really like. I agree with you how they just kind of set up the scene where there's these people who are just kind of floating around, and we kind of know who they are, or we do know who they are, but they're just kind of floating around, and they don't have a reason to be together or form any kind of alliance quite yet. And then things happen one after the other that leads them to cross paths and then form an alliance together. And I also agree. I really like how they kind of tell you where we are in what point of time in terms of where they are in their lives, in the
Mm.
sense that you know Thomas isn't married yet. He hasn't even met Martha, and he's not like necessarily a billionaire yet. We don't really know what his like. I mean, his finances sound good, but he doesn't sound like he has an empire yet. There's no Wayne Corporation or anything like that. And then Alfred's just Alfred trying to start a business. It's like he just finished college and he doesn't
Right.
he's trying to figure out what his career path is gonna be. So I really like that. It just kind of sets everything up for us. And it's a lot like the title where you know we just get to make assumptions because we already know so many things, and they only have to feed us like small amounts of information for us to connect dots. And I really like that about it. And even if you don't know anything about these characters, it's still enough for you to understand who these characters are. Like, you don't have to know who Martha is, or that, Thomas Wayne is Batman's dad and he's gonna get married and have a son one day. You don't really need to know that to understand the story. So I like that.
Yeah, that's one thing that I was thinking about when I was watching it too, was that if it wasn't related to Batman, would I still like it? And outside of the characters' names, it might as well not be related to Batman at all. Like, you have Thomas Wayne, you have Alfred, but it's not in Gotham, it's in the UK. It's not an organization like the League of Shadows or um, anything like that, or the Court of Owls. It's this like Raven Society, which we've never heard about in the comics, or at least I haven't heard about in the comics. So they're all the things that are taking place basically feel as far removed from Batman as they could be, without just like minus the fact that they just have like the same character names. But I almost feel like you could change the character names, and it doesn't really change much of the story.
What
So
if this has nothing to do with Batman, and it just is coincidence that these characters have these names?
right, big coincidence. Even the DC logo. but but I don't mind it too, because like they have offshoots and everything in comics all the time. Well, where characters that don't normally get as much play might get like a one shot of a story or whatever. And even with like the way this opening plays out, the opening feels like a comic book to me. So like this feels like a kind of one shot story that I could enjoy. But that does bring me to one of my concerns, though, because we've given a lot of praise to this first episode, and that's basically because the first episode is kind of self-contained. It's basically a movie, and a short movie, but basically a movie with a beginning, middle, and end, with resolutions and everything. So in the end, I find myself asking, where do you go from here, and how do you have enough for what, like 10 episodes a season? And there's at least 2 seasons of this show out right now at the time of this recording. So that was like my concern, because I was like, I love the first episode, I really think this is good. Can you really push this for like 20 plus episodes that are around 50 minutes apiece?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I agree. And this is why I told you to only watch the first episode, and that's because I knew that it was contained, and I knew that, well, it was also an extra long episode, so
Right.
that's why I think it had that ability to be self-contained. It was definitely enough to make me want to keep watching more. But and this is, I watched it before, a while back, like maybe like a year ago or something like that, or when it first came out is when I first watched it, and I watched only the first 2 episodes, and then I called it quits, actually. And it's not because I wasn't interested, but it was more because there were other things that I would have rather watched, and I just never came back around to it. And I think
Okay.
part of it had to do with just the pacing. It does seem kind of slow. Um, and it was kind of hard to understand because some of their accents are very thick.
Subtitles.
Yeah,
Use
and
subtitles.
but they also use a lot of, British lingo, because it's like
I
it's
love it. I love it so much. It makes me so happy to hear him. I don't even know if this is like a proper slur word, but when he walks away, he says tosses. I was like, oh, I love it. Yeah.
I don't dislike it. I'm just not used to it, and so it's just a little bit hard to understand sometimes, especially when the accents are really thick. So and
True.
they all have very different accents. So we have like a Scottish accent, and we have like at least three different regional accents from the UK.
Yes.
So it's just kind of a lot all over the place. It's just a little hard. It just feels very up and down when people are talking, and I think that was a little bit challenging for me. That I feel like I got over pretty quickly after watching the first half hour or so of the first episode.
Hmm.
Um, I don't really know why else I stopped watching it. It was just a little slow, I think.
Yeah,
But
it might have also just been the timing.
yeah, and I wouldn't say that I never want to pick it up again. It's just I haven't. So
Right. And like you mentioned, like the accents. We were briefly talking about accents before we started our YouTube recording, which if you guys want to check us out and hear more of our conversations, make sure you check us out over on Twitch, twitch.tv/C3Films for more of our discussions on these movies and stuff over there. But while we're talking about Alfred Pennyworth's accent specifically and how, and we could be wrong, so forgive us if we're wrong in the comments, don't shred us, but it feels like the actors that they get to play Alfred have consistently the same regional British accent, no matter which actor is playing him. The actor that they got to play Alfred in Pennyworth seems to have the same accent and dialect as the actor who plays Alfred in Gotham, which feels very similar to Andy Serkis's Alfred, which feels like similar to Michael Caine. So we could be wrong, and maybe our ears are just like not hearing things clearly, but it feels that way. And I do like the fact that, if true, there's a consistency to this character and an attention to detail as far as what region of the UK he's from, that they continuously pay attention to.
yep. I don't remember. So okay, a little. I mean, I guess it's not really a spoiler, but in the George Clooney Alfred,
Yes.
that Alfred was very underwhelming. I don't remember his accent at all, but I did
Well, he
think
was just
about
an old butler too. That was all that
yeah.
Alfred had to offer.
But he just I just feel like over the years, the 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 Pennyworth character has grown and developed so much um, since the '90s, I guess, because that's when the Clooney Batman was.
Hmm.
Um, but I think it's just kind of exciting. I kind of like being able to and everyone loves Alfred anyway, but I think we're just kind of loving him even more as time goes on and we get different versions of him.
Yeah, Alfred has slowly become one of my favorite members of the Bat family, and I love what he has to offer. I love what he brings to the table. I love that they've added more to his character, like you said, over the years than what was apparent when we first started watching, like Tim Burton's Batman, or even Batman the animated series. Because in Batman the animated series, Alfred very much was kind of a sassy butler. Like, he had personality, but he was basically just the butler. There wasn't anything beyond that. I love that they've rounded out his character to be somebody that has been able to raise this kid and train him, and has more of a presence on Batman than it felt like he had in those older things that we used to watch. And we'll talk more about that when we get into Gotham. But this character, when you're seeing how he interacts and you're seeing how he's able to be competent in dangerous situations, you can see how somebody like this would be able to like train a kid, or like how they would lean into their own training in order to like help a kid who's dealing with trauma. So I love it. There's a consistency there to the point where almost I could look at the Pennyworth Alfred and then watch Gotham and be like, yeah, that's the same person.
Mm-hmm.
That's absolutely the same person. This takes place
Yeah.
afterward. This takes place afterwards. Duh.
But yeah, and I think it's just also the idea of how they made Alfred instrumental in Bruce becoming Batman.
Yeah.
Because before it's he went off to the league and learned everything and stuff like that. But now there's like an additional thing, and he's also like some line of support. He's kind of like a sidekick that Batman never knew he needed, but or like he does know, but um, even in the Batman, he's getting help from
True.
intellectual help from his Alfred. So,
Alfred's actually solving. I think Alfred solves more mysteries than Batman does. So yeah, but yeah. So I don't know. Like if I had anything final to say, I would say that the first episode is really good. It's a very good pilot, but I don't know where you go from there. I don't know that there's enough content to mine to support a longer form television show, and I'd have to watch more to see. But part of me feels like there might not be, considering that you fell off of it after episode 2, and I think part of that might be because of the fact that at the point that you had watched up to, it didn't really feel like there was anything happening that was very, very interesting enough to call you back at least immediately. Even, and not to say that more interesting things couldn't happen, but at least at that point it felt like maybe the second episode didn't do as much for you as the first episode did.
I feel like I'd have to agree on that because, when I think about it, I don't remember anything from that second episode. I kind of only remember the first episode, even before, rewatching it for this show. I was
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to remember, like, oh, I already seen it, so what happened? And just I really don't remember anything from that second episode. And I actually thought I watched 3 episodes, but I didn't. I only watched 2. So,
Wow, that
but
first episode felt like 2 episodes for you.
it was really long. So, but I am interested to know what you think if you watch more.
Yeah, and like I'll probably get back to it eventually. There's a couple of things that I'm watching right now that I want to continue, but like when I get done with those, this will be on my list as something I can definitely like throw on like while I work or something like that, just to check it out. And I'll let you know. I watched more of the 100 when I didn't expect to and got surprised. So and that pilot was way worse than Pennyworth. So I think Pennyworth at least I think I owe Pennyworth at least a season, I would say.
Yeah,
But
and I'm gonna be busy watching all 5 seasons of Gotham again. Sorry.
oh my God, we're gonna talk about Gotham in a second. But yeah, guys. So is there anything else that you wanted to say before we get out of here?
Nope, that's it for me.
So yeah, we're gonna get ready to go, and we're gonna talk more on our Twitch channel. Remember, that's twitch.tv/C3Films. If you want to follow us over there, and it really helps out the channel. And as for this channel on YouTube, make sure that you guys also give us a follow here and like and subscribe. It really does help us out. But either way, what did you guys think about Pennyworth? Did you enjoy it? Did you feel like the pilot was enough for you? Are you interested in seeing more? Whatever you thought, comment below. Let us know. And even if you don't, though, I have been Chris, and this has been
Cheryl, and we'll see you all next time.